everyone, welcome to another video. This is Cameron with another video, and today we're going to do an album review. And today we're going to do an album that celebrates its 60th anniversary tomorrow. I think everyone knows what it is. And it is going to be, of course, the Beatles' album A Hard Day's Night. So this video we're going to go over a bit of background about the album and what the Beatles were doing around about this time, show you my copies of the album, all the singles associated with it, and go over each track individually and give the album as a whole a marking out of 10. So, the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night was their third studio album, released on the 10th of July 1964 on Parlophone. Just adjust the camera a bit. There we go. Now, 1964 had been a busy year for the Beatles up to this point, and so had 63 as well. At the start of the year, they were in Paris for a series of shows, and then they went to America in the beginning of February of 64, where they, of course, had that famous appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. And Beatlemania was really in its infancy, but it was really kind of in the by this point Beatlemania was going strong by this point, or was just getting strong at this point. When they came back to America, they began recording some songs for new material, and in between this, they were also filming their first film, which was called A Hard Day's Night. But in between this and their kind of touring, they were still They were still recording material that became this album. And this album is quite a significant one because this was the first album to have all Lennon and McCartney compositions, no covers this time, all original Lennon and McCartney tunes. So their songwriting was definitely developing at this point in time, and they filmed their first film, which came out a few days before, and the crowds premiere went to see it, and they even got a reception in their hometown of Liverpool, as well as for the film, and whole loads of fans went to that. So Hard Day's Night was a very well received album. It reached #1 in the UK, unsurprisingly, and it's definitely a favourite amongst Beatles fans. And in between this, they also recorded their Long Tall Sally EP, which came out a few weeks before the album. And this one has a few covers, but one original song. Side 1 has Long Tall Sally, which was originally Little Richard, and then I Call Your Name, which is a Lennon McCartney song that had originally been given to Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas. Then Slow Down, which is Larry Williams, and Matchbox, which was a Carl Perkins song originally. This is a mono original. And the Parlophone. So that was recorded also during those sessions for A Hard Day's Night. They recorded the album from kind of February into April, and then into finished it off in June of 64. And they also went on their first tour of Australia in the June of 64. But during that tour, Ringo Starr became ill with tonsillitis and had to take the first couple of weeks off to recuperate, and another guy filled in for him. His name was Jimmy Nicol. But then Ringo rejoined the tour when he got better. And so after the album and film, the Beatles went on a massive tour of America from August to September of 1964, playing cities across the country. So 1964 was a busy year, as so was 63. But anyway, now we're going to show you my copies of the album. So here's the front. I like that front cover photo. Kind of like each member of the Beatle in like a row. So there's the first row is John. Then we have George, Paul, and of course Ringo. This is a mono original copy from 1964. This is one that my mum had many years ago. And there's all the tracks there, and all the liner notes. As you can see, she wrote her name on under each Beatle, which, well, anyhow, it's always nice to know who's who sometimes, I suppose. But there's some nice pictures down there. And it is of course on the yellow Parlophone label. It's a little bit scratchy, but it does play okay. I think it does skip, however, unfortunately, but still not bad to have, though. It's nice to have this record, though, on the yellow Parlophone label. But I think it probably should play okay if I give it a clean. And I also got the album on CD as well. This is the British original version, because I'm going to show you the American versions in a minute. Here's the Stereo 2009 remastered CD. This is probably the one to get if you're going to get the Beatles albums on CD. These are probably the ones to go for. Inside, nice pictures. That's a nice picture there. Really like that picture on the inside. And it is, of course, reproduction of the original Parlophone label. And here's the book. That's a great cover. That's a great picture of the back. So these 2009 CDs are really good because you get a lot of pictures from around about the time. It even comes with like liner notes of what the Beatles were doing around about that time. That's a great one there. So that's the stereo CD. Then of course the mono remastered CD. This is from my mono box. It's not a legitimate one unfortunately, but still it's good to have nonetheless. They have the mono set does reproduce the originals quite nicely. Yellow Parlophone as well, just the usual norm. And in America, as I said, now Hard Day's Night of course was available as a film, which I have that on DVD here. It just looks like that. Got some bonus features as well, which is really cool. Haven't yet seen the film, but I definitely need to give it a watch. But I know it's got Wilfred Bramble, who was in Steptoe and Son, which is one of my favourite shows as of recent. But anyway, in America, 2 weeks before the album came out in the UK, Hard Day's Night came out as a soundtrack album in America, like this. It's like red as well, and there's the back. Now with the American version, it had the film songs, and it even had songs that were on the instrumental music from George Martin, their producer. These pictures as well. This copy is a 1970s reissue. It's on the Sunrise label. On United Artists, who were of course the people who kind of distributed the film. It's a stereo copy. I do have a CD version of it in the in the US albums box set, which I forgot to bring up, but I definitely will do a video on that box set sometime. So that's that one. Then something new came out a week after, or a few weeks after the soundtrack, which was the songs that kind of filled the studio album, but there were some songs from the film used on this this album. This one is a 1986 reissue version on the Capitol or Rainbow label. It's still really good to have this. A nice cover picture as well of the Ed Sullivan Show as well. Okay, so now we're going to go over the album's songs. So the album starts off with the title track, A Hard Day's Night, and I like the way it starts with the iconic guitar going ding. I think that was George's guitar, and it goes to the ding sound. And that's probably a great way to start it off. And then of course they start singing in. Really like the beat, the guitar, and the vocals, and there was a piano bit in the middle played by George Martin. The do 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 do. And the title of this song came from Ringo. When they were trying to find a title, and I think Ringo was having a conversation, and somebody said, "Oh, you look tired today, Ringo," and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's been a hard day's night," and that was how they got the title of the song. And a great song it is. The single of this was also issued on the same day, which I have here in its original Parlophone sleeve, Hard Day's Night, and its B-side was Things We Said Today. And this reached #1 in the UK, perhaps unsurprisingly. But yeah, really great song, one that I really like a lot, and it's one that appears on the Beatles' Greatest Hits albums a lot, like Collection of Beatles Oldies but Goldies, the Red album, and the 20 Greatest Hits and the Beatles 1 album, so one that appears quite a lot. Great one, Hard Day's Night. It's a great one to start it off with, and one I really like a lot. Then we have I Should Have Known Better. Now I Should Have Known Better, I like the harmonica, the way it starts off, the do 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 do, and then John comes in and sings the song really well. And one of my favourite vocal moments from John, and one of my favourite Beatles songs, one that I really like a lot, I Should Have Known Better. Great song. Definitely one that I really like a lot. This was one that the Beatles Never played live, believe it or not, but there was one version that they did on the BBC radio on the light programme From Us to You in July of '64. So we do have one version of the Beatles singing it, not in the studio, but not out in front of a live audience. But still a really great song, one of my favourites. Then we have If I Fell. If I Fell is a nice sort of ballad type song, sung by John and Paul, kind of harmonising with each other. This is one that the Beatles performed in their 1964 tour. And you can hear a version of it on the Hollywood Bowl concert that they did. And so yeah, that's a great one, If I Fell. A nice sort of soft type ballad song, love song really, but it's still a really, really good song. Yeah, the album kind of definitely has a lot of variety with that. Then we have I'm Happy Just to Dance With You. Now this is the only song on the album, although it's written by Lennon and McCartney, but it's not sung by John or Paul, it's actually sung by George. And George does a really good job of singing the song. And this is the second time that George would sing a Lennon and McCartney composition, because most of George's vocals were either his own songs or they were cover songs. So this is one of, I think, two occasions where George sang a Lennon and McCartney composition, the other being Do You Want to Know a Secret in 1963's Please Please Me album. And yeah, George does a really good vocal performance of that song. That's, again, one they never did live, but it was one that you can hear on the BBC session of From Us to You in July 1964, if you can try to look that up. Really, really great song. Really like that one. I'm Happy to Just Dance With You. Then we have And I Love Her. And I Love Her is a really nice kind of acoustic song with the do. It has a good intro, do 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 do, and it has like a kind of bongo, which I think is played by Ringo. Paul sings the song really, really well. The kind of inspiration for the song, I think, was his relationship at the time with the actress Jane Asher, who Paul dated for quite a number of years and back in the 60s. So yeah, this is a really, really nice kind of soft one that Paul sings rather well, I think, and one that I think Paul has continued to do live at some point over the years. I don't know about that. I might be right or I might be wrong, but I know at one point he did it live. Yeah, good. So really love that song, And I Love Her. One that surprised made its appearance on the Beatles Red album, 62 to 66, which is really great that it was included. Yeah, lovely song. And there's a version of And I Love Her that wasn't issued in the UK or the US at the time, but the ending where the do 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 was played 4 on the UK edition, while it was repeated 6 times on the on a German import of the Something New album. But that wouldn't see released in the UK until the 1980 Beatles box and also the American Rarities album in 1980. So yeah, but a great song, And I Love Her. Shame it was never a single. I think it would probably have been a hit had it come out as a single, but hey ho. But the Beatles always had like policies of never releasing singles on albums, songs from albums as singles. But there were 2 songs that came out as singles on this album, but they were like before the album. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Then we have Tell Me Why. I really like this song, one of my favourites. I love the vocal harmonies from Paul and John, and I think George helps in on this one as well. Tell Me Why. One that you don't hear too often, but still a really, really good song. One that I really like a lot. Tell Me Why. I really like the chorus and the vocals on that. Yeah, great one. Tell Me Why. Then we have Can't Buy Me Love. Can't Buy Me Love was the first song that they wrote and recorded for this album. They had originally recorded it when they were in Paris in January of 1964. And at the same session that resulted in the German language versions of She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand. And it was also issued as a single in March of 1964 and was a number 1, unsurprisingly. Here's my copy of the single. And the B-side was You Can't Do That. So yeah, great single. I really like Paul's vocal and the kind of rolling drum to it. And it goes the do 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 the usual Beatle beat, and it's a great one. It's one that Paul McCartney has continued to play live in the years that have followed, and he played it on his recent tour and the Got Back tour. So it's one that makes appearances from time to time over the years. So yeah, that's a great one, Can't Buy Me Love. One that I think everybody really kind of knows as well. And Can't Buy Me Love was on the Oldies But Goldies Red album from 62 to 66 and the number 1 album. So it's made an appearance on every Beatles package that has been done, maybe with the exception of Rock and Roll Music or Love Songs or I think it might have also appeared on Real Music as well in 1982, but still a really, really great song, Can't Buy Me Love. Big hit from the Beatles in both sides, so yeah. Then we turn it over to the songs that are not in the film, and it's kind of laid out similar to Elvis, some of Elvis' soundtracks, because the Beatles made it in films, and they loved Elvis, and they probably saw some of his films, and some of Elvis's soundtracks had the film songs, and they had songs that were just he'd done in the studio in some of the years, like Loving You was a good example, as was Spin Out, and I'm trying to think of another soundtrack where that was an example. Double Trouble and Speedway as well. So some of those films had that. And the Beatles, so this wasn't a kind of new formula. Elvis had done it before the Beatles. So, but anyway, first track up is Anytime at All. I really like this one. One of my favourite kind of John Lennon songs. I really like the vocals and the lyrics to the song. One that I think Nils Lofgren actually covered as well, so yeah, interesting. Must have been that good for Nils to cover it. And yeah, it's one of my favourite ones, Anytime at All. I really like this one a lot. John Lennon sings it really good as well, like I say. And so yeah, one of my favourites. One that you don't hear too often, but a great one as well. Then we have I'll Cry Instead. I'll Cry Instead appears on the US soundtrack version of A Hard Day's Night under I Cry Instead. Now, it had been intended to appear in the film, but it was replaced with Can't Buy Me Love instead. But however, I don't think United Artists record company were aware of this and ended up putting it out on the soundtrack album as well. So, but yeah, still good song, one that I really like. Don't hear this one too often, but it's a good song. So yeah, a good song, but I don't think I would really listen to the track maybe in outside of this album. I'm not saying it's terrible or bad or anything, but it's just not one that would really. There are some instances on albums, not just the Beatles, but in any artist, where you wouldn't normally hear a track outside of the album, and this track probably falls in it for me. But still a good song. That doesn't mean it's a bad one. It's a good song. I like it a lot. I do like it. Maybe it'll grow on me eventually. Then we get Things We Said Today. Things We Said Today is one that Paul sings, and this is probably one of my favourite Paul McCartney type songs, and it was the B-side of A Hard Day's Night in 1964, and it was one that the Beatles played on their 1964 tour, because you can hear it on the Live at the Hollywood Bowl album, and one that I really like a lot. I really like Paul's vocal and the lyrics to the song as well. Paul always seems to write these kind of nice lyrics type, and really like the sort of guitar on it, and the sort of drum thing, the little cymbal thing that it does. Yeah, great song there. Things We Said Today, one that I really like a lot. Then we have When I Get Home. When I Get Home is a good song, sung by John. I think Paul does a bit of backing vocals as well. Again, a good song, but maybe it needs to grow on me a bit more. But it's not a bad song. It's a good song, but again, I think it's just one of those songs where it kind of needs to grow on you a bit, and this is probably one of them. Then we have You Can't Do That. You Can't Do That. It's one of my favourite John Lennon songs. John sings it great, and Paul and George help him on backing vocals as well. This was issued as the B-side of Can't Buy Me Love, and it's one of my favourite John songs. It's even made an appearance on the Rock and Roll Music compilation album, and there's a great version of Lou Gramm from Foreigner singing this song on YouTube. You can hear Lou Gramm singing it on YouTube, and Lou does a good job of the song as well as John doing it. One of my favourite Beatles ones though. Again, not one you hear all that often, but still a really good one, and one that I really like a lot. You Can't Do That. Then the last track on the album is I'll Be Back. Now, I'll Be Back, I really like the kind of chord to it. Some people have kind of commented that it's almost kind of a rewrite to Runaway by Del Shannon. Of course, Del Shannon was somebody the Beatles had really influenced and admired. Some people have kind of said, and I kind of can see where they're coming from. I really like the guitar intro. The vocals are great as well, and it's a good way to sort of round off the album as well. You know, like Twist and Shout was a great way to round off Please Please Me, and Money was a great way to round off with the Beatles. The Beatles did it again with I'll Be Back. It's kind of like them saying, you know, we're going to be gone for a while, but we'll come back again. And it's a great song. I really like the vocals, and just a good way to finish the album off, really, is I'll Be Back. And I'll Be Back was also featured on the Beatles 65 album in America. Later in 64. The Beatles 65 was mostly Beatles for Sale stuff, but we'll touch upon Beatles for Sale when we do that album's anniversary come December. So anyway, that's it for this album, and also got another thing to show as well. In November '64 came this EP, extracts from the film A Hard Day's Night, and they also did one for the album, which I've yet to get hold of. But on one side you get I Should Known Better and If I Fell, and on the other side is Tell Me Why and I Love Her. So 4 songs from the album and film in this EP. This came out in November '64. So there we are, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe, and Hard Day's Night for me gets another 9 out of 10. Really good album. Although I do prefer things like the first 2 albums with Please Please Me and With the Beatles. Hard Day's Night is still a really good album. It even made somewhere in the middle in my Beatles album ranking video if you want to see that. But a really great album, I do enjoy it, and I know it's a favourite amongst Beatles fans. Definitely can see the songwriting was definitely beginning to progress, and it's, you know, because we get 13 original compositions on here as opposed to, you know, a cover. Because in some cases the Beatles would do original songs. First 2 albums had like original songs and covers, and then the next album, Beatles for Sale, had original songs and covers, and Help did have quite a couple of covers on that album. But then by kind of 1965's Rubber Soul, they kind of weren't really relying on covers to fill up the albums. They were now kind of developing their own songwriting style by kind of late '65. So yeah, really good album, really enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe, and if you enjoyed this album too, and if you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more content, do like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you again for the next video.